Hi there guys, how you doing, and welcome back to a brand new video. Now, as a kid, I was a big football fan. I met a lot of my friends through football. I used to play on Saturdays and Sundays, you know, training during the week. It was a huge part of my childhood, and there's a lot of nostalgia that sort of comes along with that. I'm sure a lot of you guys watching are sort of similar, especially if you're from the UK. I feel like it's quite big here, especially amongst schools and things like that. But it's one of those things that kind of sticks with you for life. Now, looking at it from a creative angle, football is so heavily branded from the clubs, you know, the kits, sponsors, adverts, things like that. There's a lot going on, so there's a lot to look at from a creative perspective, which I also find quite interesting. So yeah, I thought in today's video what we could do is look at the Premier League teams and sort of rank them from best to worst in terms of their badge, their crest, their logo, that sort of thing. I thought this was something that would be quite interesting. Look at a few of the rebrands that have gone on throughout some of the clubs and just generally have just a little chat about things I like and don't like about the logos. I've also got a tier list, one of these things. Never done one. I know it's like a 2019 thing, but I kind of wanted to get involved. So the way it'll work, I'll just go through the teams, rank them where I think they are, and chat a little bit about the logo, show the stuff on screen, and you guys can have your opinion down below. So this is my tier list. There's a lot of clubs. We've got about 20 to get through, so I'm going to try and give a little bit of information about each club. Hopefully then it kind of gives you a bit more back information if you don't really know anything about the clubs, or if you do know about football, then this is also maybe a few little things in there that you might not have known about your rival clubs. I'm coming at it from a design perspective, so I'll talk about the elements and the history, but only relevant to the actual elements used within the design. So the way I will be ranking these is from the top one, which is graphic design is my passion. Behance qualified, does the job, you know, it's all right, it's good, it's fine, whatever, nothing too crazy. I don't rate it, and oh dear, this is for the designs that are just not great. They need some work. So we're going to start off with Aston Villa. So the Birmingham-based club features the letters AVFC rather than its full name. So the main graphic features the Scottish lion, which I believe is a Scottish lion, and it's been part of their logo since it began. I think the logo's okay. I quite like it. It's very, very minimal and flat, but it does look very traditional, which is something that I like in terms of sports logos, especially when they're representing a certain area. So I actually quite like their logo from 1975 over their current logo. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the round or the shape or whatever, but obviously you could do with a little bit of tweaking, but I do prefer this. I think the lion looks a bit better. I don't know if it's the same line as what they've got now, but it just looks better. I think a lot of their fans are going to also agree with this, so I'm going to pop it in the does the job. So Brighton is the next one, and they have a logo that, well, has a seagull on it. Makes sense, I guess. Fun fact, they were originally nicknamed the Dolphins, as their logo took inspiration from their coat of arms until a derby game against Crystal Palace, who were nicknamed the Eagles, and in response to their Eagles chant, they chanted seagulls, which is, yeah, just a pretty cool story. This Brighton logo is very modern. It's very, very clean. I do prefer the circular-based logo designs, or the shield ones. I just think they kind of fit better and look a bit better on the actual kits. I mean, the seagull is not very aggressive. It's a little bit just kind of chilled, which is fine. But I think coming up, a lot of the other birds and sort of animals that we have are sort of a bit more aggressive, or not aggressive, but like a bit more sort of powerful and dominant, whereas it's just a bit chill, just look friendly. Looks like a nice seagull. But overall, it's a cool logo, so it's going to go and sit in the does the job. I think I prefer it to Villa, so it'll have to go above that. Right, so next we're on to Burnley. This just ain't it. Yeah, so I'm not going to lie, this is probably one of the worst sports badges I've ever seen. I'm really sorry if your team is Burnley. I'm just sorry because your team's Burnley. As a logo design, not great. I mean, it's changed over time and it's very similar to the logos they had, or the crest that they had in the 60s. I actually think I prefer their designs a little bit later on. Like, there's a bit more heritage in the 70s, 80s, and 2010 was like a really nice logo, actually. I think it's quite busy. I prefer it to what is going on right now. So if you look at the actual logo now, I think the middle is way too busy. There's probably about 5 or 6 too many elements going on here. I think it needs to be stripped back quite a bit and just keep some of the key things in there, key references. Obviously, you've got like this bevel going on the outside with a gradient on it, and then you've got another shield inside, and then that's got stuff inside that. There's just too many layers to this, and there's too many little bitty bits. I mean, what is that bird sat on? It looks like a hungry caterpillar or something. Like, I don't understand what that is. I know some of these things are more like location based, so you'd only kind of really understand it if you lived in that area. So like the hands within the design represent hold to the truth, which is the sort of town motto. But the truth be told is, logo is shit. I think what they really need to do is, yeah, pull this back to maybe just 2, 3 elements that are currently going on here and just really strip it back, or go back to an older design such as the previous sort of cresty heritage ones, just remove a few of the elements out of there, simplify that a bit, and I think that would work a lot better. But as a logo design, this is not great. This is going in the oh dear. Someone needs to redesign that. I decided to give the Burnley logo a quick rebrand by taking a few of the elements from their existing badge and cleaning all the rest of it up a little bit, kind of stripping everything back and making it a little bit more minimal. So I mocked it all up on this football t-shirt mock-up that I got from Yellow Images. So this is my outcome with the mock-up there and a few of the different badge designs. If you want to go see the full project, go check me out on Instagram. The link will be down below. Which actually leads me on to today's sponsor. Yellow Images is the #1 marketplace of over 40,000 high-quality premium mock-ups, creative fonts, and 360 images. And the creative store is full of amazing graphic assets like lettering, icons, illustrations, patterns, textures, presets, brushes, UX and UI kits, and more. There's even more than that. So you can use Yellow Images mock-ups in your presentations and make your work sing. All of their mock-ups come in a high resolution with great lighting, shadows, and a texture that gives it a really realistic feel. I use mock-ups for everything, and I definitely think it gives that wow factor for your clients. And it also makes your portfolio look a lot more legit. And by the way, just for you guys, I asked Yellow Images for a 20% discount, and they gave me 100 coupons that you can claim today. These coupons are limited, so first come, first serve. Get your 20% off down below, check the link, and be one of the first 100 people to grab that discount. So next we get onto the Fulham logo. Now, it features a shield-shaped graphic with very minimal colours. But looking at their previous logos, I think they've done a really good job at just modernising what they had before. I don't think I really prefer any of their previous logos. I mean, except from their first logo. That is actually mad. That's the sort of thing I'd imagine seeing on some sort of techno label t-shirt. Obviously, that's in reference to Craven Cottage, which was a cottage that used to be on the area, I believe, before it burnt down, and then they built the stadium over the top. So overall, the main logo here, the updated one, the modern day one, I quite like the monogram in the middle. It's very basic, it's basic typeface, but I think it kind of works, and it looks very balanced and very even. It's pretty cool. I'm going to pop it in the Behance Qualified. Yeah, I think I actually quite like that logo. So Leeds is the next team, and Leeds have recently had a rebrand. Well, kind of a rebrand. They've rebranded and then went back, which is like not really what you want to do as a brand. Obviously, something has gone clearly wrong there, and they got enough backlash to change it back to their previous design. So looking at the two on screen here, the left being the original one, which is also the one they're using now, and the one on the right, which they tried out very, very briefly, and was the design that they went for when thinking about a rebrand. I think this was back in 2018. Didn't last very long. So what they tried to do, I think, is really, really modernize that logo. Obviously, people recognize things and they build bonds to things as they sort of grow up with that. This logo isn't really like a kind of sleeker or updated version of the previous. It's just kind of a complete redesign. So I think a lot of people who had like that connection to it probably lost that with this redesign. And this is a very, very modern design. This is very slick, sort of what you would expect from 2018. I feel like everything went very flat, these sort of graphics. You'll see some of the other brands who have done this in a slightly better way, I think, like things like Man City, West Ham. They've done a similar thing where they've updated it to a bit more of a flat, clean style, but I think they've done it better because they've kept a few more of those sort of original elements. I really like this as a logo. The strong shield, you got the flower on there. It's very well balanced, and it's sort of a nice design, nice shape. I think the only thing I'd actually change if I was to change it was maybe the text in the middle. I'm not quite a fan of that sort of script serif typeface in the middle of there. Don't know if it looks a bit weird. I think the rest of it can be, or you know, cleaned up a little bit, a bit more minimal, but that kind of looks a little bit off maybe. But then I don't know, if it was with sans serif instead, it might look weird. But yeah, as a logo, I think it is really, really nice, and I don't think they should have ever changed it. So for me, I quite like this. It's good. I'm gonna put it in Behance Qualified, but I'm gonna put it behind Fulham. So we're now moving on to the Wolves logo, which is probably the sleekest one in the Premier League. It's very minimal and clean again, and it's probably the most unique looking. It's got a different shape. The hexagon is not really traditional, which you'd probably find quite common with all the other ones. It's obviously changed over time. So if you look back at the previous sort of logos they've done, although the wolf has always been the main feature there, you can see in the 80s they sort of had that shield shape, and the 90s and at the start in the 1920s. A lot of the teams originally kind of came from the local coat of arms, so they always carried on that shield shape and things like that. So it's quite interesting to see a team that sort of changed that over time. I mean, in the 70s, they just had just the wolf's head. I don't know if that's just a bit too basic. Out of all the logos, I do think their present one from 2002 to now is definitely my favourite logo. I mean, it's quite a cool looking logo for a football team. It's not really the traditional one. And the orange as well is, there's no other teams that use orange in their clubs. So it definitely does stand out. I think for me, the only downside for this as an actual club badge is if you weren't a football fan, you didn't know who Wolves were, you might not necessarily understand that this is actually a football team. But then I guess it doesn't really matter too much. So I think this is going to actually have to be the first contender for graphic design is my passion. I'm doing it. I'm putting it straight at the top. I just think it's a cool logo for a team. Being called Wolves, having a wolf head, like, it's pretty sick. I'm not going to lie. So yeah, it's going to have to go in that top spot. Right, Liverpool, champions of the league. My team. What more is there to say? Obviously, I'm going to be a little bit biased on this team because it's instantly recognisable for me and holds a lot of meaning and nostalgia to me personally. But I guess everyone's team has that for themselves, so it's all good. But obviously, yeah, I'm going to be a bit biased on this one. So looking at the logo for the past 100 years or so, it has changed quite a bit, but the bird has been a prominent sort of graphic used within this since the start, which is cool. And that is the actual modern day logo, which they've actually recently rebranded a bit more, kind of the past 2 years. They've slicked it back a bit. So on the modern kits, you'll actually just see just the bird rather than the full Liverpool crest with the shield and the flames. It's just the bird, which I think looks really good. Proud. It's not too aggressive, but it's also not too sort of like chill. It's quite a strong looking bird. I did really like the original, or the one that we were previously using, which is probably the most familiar logo for it. But you know, a few of these elements probably could have been pulled back. So I kind of like how it has "You'll Never Walk Alone" at the top, which means a lot to a lot of the players and a lot of the fans. But again, I don't know if you actually really need this within the logo itself. So obviously they've got rid of that, but I think that's probably the right sort of choice. So our current logo is actually not too far removed from the 50s. Well, the 50s until the 80s, really. The simple bird. I think a lot of clubs do this. They brand over time, and then fashion comes back round again, and so does things like this. So people always love like vintage things. And I think it's the same with clubs, you know. People kind of grow up and then they like the older version of things. Like, it's weird how things sort of just repeat. But looking back at this now, I do think that that is probably the best design. I would have said that if we hadn't rebranded recently. I would have said that the other ones were probably better, in my opinion. But yeah, enough said about Liverpool. Obviously, that bad boy is going straight to the top. Graphic design is my passion. Liverpool's sitting up there at the top, in my opinion. Best, mate. Best one. So next we're moving on to Sheffield United, who not having the best season so far. So looking at their latest design, they've done, again, a similar thing. They've used a very similar design to what they had in the 70s and the 90s. I absolutely love this logo. I think it's sick. So they've got the two sort of cross swords there as their nickname, the Blades, and also this sort of references their history as a steel production, or the steel production in Sheffield. I think if you remove the outside ring, I mean, this could be a pirate flag. Do you know what I mean? Like the little flower and the swords, like this could be like some sort of mad pirate flag. That's why I like it. I think it's a pretty sick little crest to have. If that was big on the back of a t-shirt, like that would look pretty cool, you know? Yeah, I like it. I think there's not too many graphics going on. There could be a bit more space in the middle in terms of like where the flower is and the sword. It might be a little bit too tight in there. Maybe balancing out the circle a bit so there's something else filling that sort of blank space on the left and the right at the bottom. But other than that, I think it's spot on. It's one of my favorite logos, and I love it. So we're gonna have to stick this at the top, and I'm gonna put this in between Liverpool and Wolves. Yeah, I actually like it more than Wolves. I think it's sick. Next, moving on to Man United. Glory, glory, Man United. Probably one of the most iconic teams in the world in terms of when you look at it, you know exactly what it is. The Manchester United logo has been based on the Army Consulate's coat of arms. It's probably the most recognisable to people who don't follow football. For anyone who's watching this that doesn't follow any UK football or know anything about the Premier League, what would you say is the most recognisable out of all the teams? Do you recognise any of these things? I mean, you could probably take out the text and maybe even the graphics and people would recognise it, which is ideal. So looking back at their previous logos, I actually think their one from like the 60s is actually pretty sick. Those colours probably work a little bit better if they kind of merged the two. So did that version, but like a modern version. Combination of the two would probably be spot on. But as design goes, it has to sit in the pretty good tier, I reckon. We're going to pop that straight in here. I think we can put it at the end there. Don't like it as much as the others, but definitely a good logo for a football team. So now we've got another interesting one to discuss. They did a recent rebrand, Man City, in 2016, and they did the similar thing to what Leeds did. They sort of modernised their logo, cleaned it up, and made it a little bit flat and minimal. So when I originally saw this, I didn't really love it. I thought they tried to make it too sleek and too modern, and it kind of took away a little bit, but actually looking back over their logo history, it's actually not too far from a lot of their previous logo designs from, you know, the 60s, 70s. And they've actually just taken a few elements from their previous logo designs and made it a modern day flat version, which I think is quite nice. It's quite recognizable still. Yeah, actually it's grown on me over time. I think it's actually done, you know, a pretty good job. Again, very, very similar to Man United. There are a lot of similar elements because both of these teams have taken inspiration from the coat of arms of Manchester. So a lot of these things are going to be the same. I mean, if you look at their original design, they're even red and yellow. At one point, these teams could have looked pretty identical. So I guess that's why they've kind of pushed towards the blue color, blue and gold in their most latest design, because it kind of separates them quite a bit from Man United, which is obviously you want to definitely be separate. Both of them also featured the ships, I believe, or they have like the water, the lines and the ships. So yeah, going on the most recent design, it's gonna have to sit in pretty good. I really do like it. I think it's a pretty good logo. I'm gonna pop it up here ahead of Fulham, so it's at the top of the Behance qualified. So now we move on to Everton, which have also had a rebrand in the last few years, but they haven't really followed the trend as the other teams have done when rebranding and gone like really flat and like these weird bold lines and that sort of thing. They have just updated it, but it still kind of has a bit more of an authentic style, I'd say. So Everton are nicknamed the Toffees. This doesn't have anything to do with the logo, but I thought I'd tell you anyway, which apparently is from people selling toffees or, you know, confectionery near the stands and having the Everton logo on it originally when they first started playing. So that's where that name comes from, which I thought was pretty fun. So looking back at their previous designs, they've sort of toyed with just text-based logos a few times over history, but they've always had this spire in there, which is actually the Prince Rupert's Tower, which is the oldest building in the area, I believe, and that's why they featured it on their logo. They also have the 2 laurel wreaths, I think they're called laurel wreaths, laurel, Yanny, which symbolises victory. So you've also got on the most updated one here, you've got under the shield, you've got the text under there, which is in Latin, which says, "Only the best is good enough," which is a pretty good motto to have, really, isn't it? But yeah, with the most modern rebrand, I mean, they've taken a lot of inspiration from the previous designs, and I think they've kept a lot of those important and crucial elements in there. So when rebranding, I think this, this looks a lot better than their previous one. I like it a lot more, very clean, but a lot of those elements are still in there, so it hasn't really gone too far away from what it previously was, which is what you want from a rebrand with things that have a lot of meaning, like a club. But I think overall it's pretty good, and I'm going to have to put it firmly in the Behance qualified, and I'm going to put it above Man United, I think. Actually, I'm going to put it above Leeds. I'm saying it now. I'm going to put it above Leeds. So now we have Chelsea. The first emblem of the club, I'll show you throughout the years here, was a collective image of the British Army veterans with medals on their chest. So it was sort of a club that was born out of the army. The logo was taken from the Royal Hospital of Chelsea. So as you can see, they introduced the lion pretty early on in the 50s. So the lion from this graphic was actually taken from the coat of arms of the head of the family of the Earl Cadogan Club. So basically it was taken from another coat of arms. But the Chelsea logo is definitely one of those big teams that is like massively recognisable. I mean, looking back, it hasn't really changed too much. I mean, they've tried out a few different things, but again, like the logo now is pretty similar to the one they used in the 50s. Again, like we keep seeing people sort of going back to their original designs, but it's just like a modern day version of that, which yeah, I think it's pretty good. The only thing I would actually say about this is the line is actually a bit of a dodgy shape, a bit of a weird sort of head tilted round. Yeah, a bit of a weird shape. Looks a little bit underweight, the line, but I guess this has been taken originally from the coat of arms, so it's probably just like a modern adaptation of the original. And I think it's very well balanced. It's sort of symmetrical. They've done a good job to sort of even everything out. I wouldn't even really change the typeface or anything. I think it looks pretty nice. But yeah, they've got a few of the graphic references in there, but as a club, it's not that old, so a lot of the references have sort of been added in, in the past 50 years, I'd say. But yeah, I'm gonna have to pop it up here in the Behance qualified. I'm gonna put it above Leeds again. I'm actually gonna put it above Everton. I think I prefer it a lot more. So it sits nicely up there. So now we move on to Leicester FC, and I think by far this is probably one of my favourite, if not my favourite, other than Liverpool, logos in the league. So it has the fox, because in the 19th century, the county was known for many people when it was sort of a place where people met for fox hunting. So that's why the fox is the sort of prominent graphic. And it's had this graphic since it started, pretty much. It's always been the main sort of centerpiece of the design. Obviously, in the 80s, they went for this sort of wavy, very 80s, 90s design. But, every time it still featured this logo. And it hasn't really changed over the past 30 years. They've adapted it a little bit, modernized it a little bit, but it hasn't really changed. This flower behind the head as well is also a reference to the county, so I think there's a little bit of meaning in there, like local meaning. It's nice, it's in the roundel that I really like, and it's very well balanced and it's very symmetrical. So when looking at it, it doesn't look off center, it doesn't look like any side is a little bit more text heavy, or there's graphic one side, it kind of outweighs it. It looks very, very strong. I think as a logo, it looks timeless. If you were to have this in 10 years, 20 years, like you can see it hasn't really changed from the early 90s, but I think in another 20 years it still would be pretty strong. I don't think it would really need to change that much with time, which is obviously what you want to strive for any brand. So yeah, they've smashed it. So yeah, for obvious reasons, it's going to have to go right at the top there. I think it's a great logo. So next we have Arsenal, and again, it's one of those big teams that is very recognizable. It's a sick name. Arsenal is strong, aggressive, and it's just kind of sleek looking, the modern logo. It's definitely the coolest name, and has a lot of meaning behind that and the area. So looking back through the ages, they've always featured that cannon as their main prominent graphic. They've also kept the shield in there as well, so you kept a little bit of heritage and mixed those two together. So the reason behind the cannon, the club was founded in the Woolwich area of London, where the Royal Arsenal, the Royal Artillery Regiment, and like very many military hospitals were sort of situated. So the military was a huge influence in the area, and that's sort of where that derived from. They also used elements from the coat of arms in Woolwich, and it sort of combined, I guess, and then over time has sort of adapted into what you see in the present day. I think with the cannon as well, they've also balanced it by having the wheel in the middle. So I think if that was, you showed the whole cannon in there, I think it would look off balance. So although it's a bit weird, they've cropped it off on either side, I think it makes more sense than having the full cannon in there, unless it was sort of tilted at an angle, but I'm not sure that would really work. But yeah, definitely one of the best logos. I'm also going to put that up in the top tier. I think I'm going to put it just below Leicester. Yeah, Sick. So Newcastle, I've never really looked properly at the Newcastle logo. Again, it's been based on the local coat of arms, and they haven't actually really changed their logo that many times over the years, whereas a lot of clubs have, rebranded quite a lot. But looking at their previous logos, their logo in the 70s is probably my favourite. It's quite flat like the modern ones you'd see today, and I think that would kind of stand up against the other ones that we saw earlier on, like these modern sort of flat circular logos. Also, you've got in the 80s there, they kind of went for this weird text-based logo, which I think is really, really cool. I'm not sure it really works for a football club, but I guess it kind of symbolises the ball. It has NUFC. I mean, the C is kind of at the bottom. There's a dome, and you've got the magpie in there as well. Yeah, I think it's cool, but I don't think it really works too well. But their most recent logo has kind of gone back to their coat of arms, and it's gone back to the sort of same design that they had in the 60s. Again, using elements to represent their area, such as the castle. Also, the sort of seahorses connecting to the sea. It's a good design, very, very traditional. It's probably the most traditional logo actually in the Premier League, like in terms of coat of arms looking. I think it's okay. I don't think it's anything too crazy. I'm going to put it in does the job at the end. I actually haven't got anything in there, don't rate it. So the Southampton design has not really changed ever, really. If you're looking back at the previous designs, it's kind of pretty much stayed the same. It actually almost looks identical, their modern one, to their previous one. I don't think they've even changed it. I think they've just gone back to it after, like a more updated version. So in 1973, the team held a logo design contest, and the work of the winner was then unveiled and used as their new club logo. So that's what they have there, and that's what they have now. That's the same one. So it's the same one that won the contest. So once again, it takes elements from the coat of arms in the area, and it uses the shield shape and the tree and the flower, which is the Hampshire rose, and uses a combination of these red and white colours. Right, so I'm not really a fan of this logo. The reason is, I mean, the shape's okay, the overall lockup is alright. The tree drawing is just not decent. Like when you think of like a strong club and like heritage, the line drawings I'm not really a fan of. It looks a little bit too childlike, the water and the tree, which is the kind of main focal point, the centre. So I think it kind of takes away from the whole design, which I think if they just had the flower or, got rid of that tree element in there, I think the overall lockup would be pretty nice. Maybe sort the text out a little bit. It looks a little bit cramped in some areas. So yeah, the rest I'm okay with, but it needs sleeking up a bit. I think this is due a rebrand, definitely. Get rid of that tree, maybe overlay the flower with the tree, but make the tree a little bit of a nicer illustration rather than this one. I don't think this is a very good illustration of a tree. So for that reason, Southampton is going in the I don't rate it. It's the first contender for the I don't rate it. If it wasn't for that tree, I think it'd be in does the job, but it's not the strongest, certainly not the strongest that we've seen today. So we're now on to Crystal Palace, and this is a very, very strong design. It has changed quite a bit since the club started, so over the past however many years, but I think I actually do prefer the modern day version rather than like one of these circular designs or one of the previous versions. I think this is definitely the stronger version. They've had the same sort of thing for the past few versions of logos that they've had, but they've updated it. But this modern version is definitely stronger, more aggressive, and just a lot cleaner as a design. I think the birds before didn't really look like an eagle. One of them sort of looks like a pigeon, but now the eagle is like very, very prominent, and you can see that pretty well. I think as well what's important is they've got just the right amount of detail in their logo. It's not too overdone, it's not too sort of small and bitty. It's quite clean and also has enough detail in there for you to see there's a bit more going on to this logo, which is pretty good. Obviously the eagle is sitting on the famous exhibition building, which is also got like a little football going on in there, which is pretty cool. So as we were looking at some of the previous ones, the logos often get a little bit weird over time, but this is like a really good version of a logo. I think it looks really good, and I think they've done a really good job with sort of depicting the graphics within it. Yeah, so this is very striking, and it has to go at the top, and I think it might even have to go above Leicester. No, I'm going to put it there. I'm going to put it in between Arsenal. Balance maybe is the only thing that could be a bit off. I think it's pretty good. Definitely one of those top contenders. And yeah, I like it. So now we move on to the Tottenham logo, which is another bird logo. And this time it is a cockerel, which has developed again over time. But it has been the main graphic that's sort of been seen in all their logos and the main sort of prominent icon. So at one point, I believe a Northumberland family owned a lot of land in Tottenham. Sir Henry Percy, I think, was the member of the family, who was also nicknamed Harry Hotspur. And he loved cockfighting and long spurs, which I'm guessing is a type of bird. But he's basically the reason that the cockerel was then used as the main graphic, and it's also the reason why it's called Tottenham Hotspur, is because they wanted to be separated from another Tottenham club. They had this new name to sort of separate them. But yeah, I guess it sort of grew from there. I mean, at times they've used more references from the original coat of arms, but they did originally, if you look again back to the 70s, they had this modern day version, which they've sort of altered a bit now. The bird's a lot sleeker now. It sort of stands a bit more proud. I think this logo as well, the graphic, very, very simple. It doesn't follow a lot of the other trends. So the modern day logo doesn't really have like a holding device, and it's quite long. In terms of the other logos, everything's normally quite balanced and together. This one's a lot longer than it is wide. wide, which I guess separates it quite a bit. But yeah, I think it's good that they've sort of tried something different or a different shape or broken the mold a little bit, because, you know, I do like the shield and the sort of heritage references, but when every single club has that, you know, it's nice to see something a little bit different. The only thing I think potentially looks weird is the typeface at the bottom here. Might be a little bit off. I don't know if it could be changed, made a little bit more modern to fit the modern day sort of illustration, but I don't know, maybe that's just me thinking about it, and maybe it's a little bit off, like the way that it goes around the ball. Yeah, I like the logo a lot, and I think I'm going to put it at the top of the does the job. So now we move on to West Brom, which is actually the third bird we've had in a row, and this time it's a thrush, just chilling on a branch. Less aggressive than the other ones, less sort of dominant, a bit more just sort of chill. But looking back at their previous logos, the thrush has been a prominent image throughout all of their logo graphics, to be fair, apart from the 70s when they had just a text-based one, but it's always been that sort of main focal point. Apparently there's loads of meanings behind this when I was researching before. One of them being like there was always this thrush sat on the crossbar of the gate, and then this was depicted being on the branch. And apparently when you heard the bird singing, that meant the team was going to win. But also another meaning is apparently a lot of the players used to go to a brothel where they had a thrush bird in there. I don't know how true that is, but that is what I read online. Good source of information. But how I think it compares to the other logos, it's not a bad logo. I just don't think it's really anything too crazy. I don't think the bird is that dominant. I don't think, you know, it's not too much going on there. I think it is quite sleek and minimal. It would probably stand up against all the other sort of sleek and minimal ones, but I think there could be, you know, a few extra things going on here. But yeah, it's all right. It's a good logo, but, you know, nothing special. I'm going to put it at the does the job. I'm going to put it here, just below Villa. Actually, no, I'm going to put it above Villa because I think it actually looks a little bit better than Villa's logo. So now we're on to our final logo, which is West Ham United, also known as the Hammers. And they've gone through quite a few different logo designs in the past 100 or so years. They've sort of kept the same sort of graphic elements in there. So the castle and the hammers have always been a key point of their logo design. So I think in their modern day versions, they've still kept some of these elements that have been so prominent throughout their time. So the club originally owned or belonged to the Thames Ironworks shipbuilding company. So this is where the sort of hammer icons originated from, was from the shipbuilding. So the fortress that's actually on there was actually known as the Green Street House, which was then removed off their latest version. So their latest version doesn't actually have that in there, even though that's been part of it for the last 40, 50 years. They decided to take that part away and just keep the hammers. So the modern day logo, you can actually put next to probably the City logo, the Leeds logo, and it pretty much looks like it's done by the same person. Like the same sort of thing that they've gone through there, really pulled back on a lot of those elements and sort of big, bold text, bold lines, and clean graphics. Do I like it? It's right. It is quite well balanced. I do like the hammers and stuff on there, but I think maybe their previous version was a little bit nicer. I quite like the castle in there, or the the fortress in there. I think that's quite a nice graphic element. It's quite strong. That and the hammers together sort of has a lot of meaning behind that. And I think potentially what you could do to make it a little bit more interesting is have the hammers coming off the shield a little bit, or just having just the hammers and the text, or somehow working back that fortress back in there. I mean, I don't hate it. I think it's a nice logo, but I think I kind of preferred the previous one. But yeah, overall it's balanced, it's pretty good, and I'm going to put it in the does the job section, probably above Brighton. So yeah, this is the final layout. So as you can see, it's very top heavy, but these brands, or these teams have millions to spend on branding and that sort of thing, their designs. So you'd be pretty surprised if a lot of these weren't good. But yeah, that's it. I hope you've enjoyed. If you agree with any of this, or you've got a different opinion, let me know down below. I'd be keen to hear what you guys think, even if you don't really care about football. From a design perspective, like what do you like, what do you not like? And as well, if there's any other things you'd like me to review or talk about from a design perspective, then let me know, because I'm always keen to be talking about new things. Anyway, enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. It's lockdown 2.0, so a bit dodgy out there. But yeah, anyway, see you later, and in a bit.